Some windows are not visible at the same time. Why, I'm not sure. So I can't get Zoom and the agenda on at the same time, but I think I basically remember it. Some windows are not visible at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, it does this thing where why, I'm not sure. Desktops. I can't get Zoom and the agenda on at the same time, but I think I basically remember it. What?
Okay, sorry.
I'm here.
We were double dipping here on the live meeting on my computer and on Zoom. So now we are just live, and now you can call the meeting to order.
Okay, all right. I called the meeting to order at what is probably by now 5:38 or 5:39. And we will start with the approval of the minutes.
5:38.
Want to do it by hand or just a motion?
I just need a motion.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Perfect.
And then show of hands, except for Carol.
Yeah, Carol's going to actually have to come off of mute to vote.
Although it passes even without her voting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oops, hang on, let me go to this box here. Got it. Okay, so that would be well, I can call her an abstain.
Okay.
Donna, a yes.
Clearly here.
Absent.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
All right. I have received no public comment.
Nor have we.
Okay.
So
I suppose I could go check my email right now on the theory that someone might have sent in something last minute. And nope, that's a nope. Okay. And then we would move on to the planning the community forum, which is exciting.
yeah, so I will just share with the committee the couple of things, Jenny, that I've shared with you. So if you just give me a second.
Yeah, sorry, I've misplaced my notebook too. So
Like you, I've got multiple.
That's what I'm grabbing. Sorry.
okay.
If I do this. Okay, and if I do this, no, that. Okay, so one of the things that I have built is just kind of like a flyer that we would be able to use for some of our publicity. So this would go out probably through Swift K-12. We would definitely have it on the website. We would post it through our social media outlets, and I probably have the principals use it also in some of their community happenings, just in case people don't necessarily read the Swift K-12, but they have the community happening. I didn't know if we, you know, the couple of things that I sort of thought about was I restricted it to the 2 hours. That seemed to be kind of, I did contact Bethany and got the information that they've been using to structure theirs. So they structure theirs for 2 hours. I think we talked about having it in the library media center because it's a little cozier and a little more intimate depending on the number of people we have. Okay. You know, I said that it was open to all Amity families because I think at our, and Jenny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but our public comment sessions of the board, it obviously is open to anybody in the public. But the community forums for Bethany are really only advertised through the school and are really intended for the families of students at BCS, not necessarily for every community member to come and use it as a public forum. Is that correct?
Well, I feel like at least as they started, anyone could come, and they have the Zoom links now that make it easy for anyone to pop in, but it ends up mostly being parents in the community.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I sort of use that just so that, and again, you know, so that it kind of targets our audience to people who would have,
Mhm.
I really want it, I hope it's helpful for parents. So anyway, that's that publicity. What I would do with this is probably draft up a letter that kind of explains the intention a little bit more. You know, with some of the key things that we've pointed out that, you know, during board meetings, we know that parents, you know, can make public comment, but they aren't able to necessarily ask a question and get an answer. So this is intended to sort of fill that void. You know, that our first topic is really about academics, but I'll try to give people ideas. You know, it could be ask any questions people have about enrichment. It could be questions people have about academic support for students who are struggling. It could be questions about our program of studies. It could be questions about leveling. It could be questions about grading. So I can give them some ideas that if somebody's like, well, I don't know what to ask about academics, it might prompt a little bit
Or
more.
maybe transition to high school as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little more social emotional, but we can certainly,
Oh, okay.
I don't know what this
I
leaves
guess people might have academic questions and social emotion
Yes.
questions about that. That is a cute little dot.
I don't know what it is, but zooming around. This is what I was trying to say is that is a live link there, but we would also have a link there, and that would bring people to, I do not know how to get out of this. There we go. To the very simple form. This is, and Jenny, you did finally get this, right? When I was sharing it. It took us forever, but
though it took forever, but I did. But honestly, I feel like spring break has wiped my mind. I don't remember anything from before that.
okay. So this would be a place where people could pre-submit their questions in advance. It explains a little bit about what the forum's purpose is, and I'll probably, like I said, use some of that language in the letter that would go out through Swift K-12.
Can you show us the form here?
Oh, sorry. I thought I was still sharing my screen. Hang on.
That's all right. It's just easier than me going and trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me find it. There we go. Share. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So it has the sort of the explanation. I'm pretty sure I set it up so it doesn't track emails or require somebody to log into Google to submit it. So that way the concept of anonymity is preserved. I would put that into the letter. They can, I think I also set it up so I allowed people to put at least 3 questions into this form, but it's structured so that more than one form can be submitted per IP address. So if somebody has 6 questions, they could, or 4 questions, they could just submit the form again. And then what I will be able to collect them, but then prior to the forum, I will probably, I'll figure out a way that I can share the answers to the members on the communications committee so that we can sort of look for those themes, or you guys can look for those themes and start to formulate those common questions that we might pose to the group.
Yeah.
And as of right now, again, so I think the only thing I have left to do really is to generate the letter that goes with the Swift K-12 and then start getting all of this posted. I wanted to, my plan was to do that, to work on the letter next week so that it could go out at the end of next week, which would be like kind of like a month, 3.5 weeks ahead of time. But then we'll probably push it out a couple more times between now and then. I'm trying to keep it and the next virtual keynote, which is 2 days later, sort of on, like, I'm trying to juggle so that the messages aren't coming out at the same time. But
Makes
they will
perfect sense.
both be coming out in the same time frame. So
Okay, what's the topic of the virtual keynote again?
It's going to be a presentation from two of the attorneys at Carter Mario Law Firm. Actually, both had attended Amity, but it's going to be on the legal consequences of social hosting, of what happens when kids text and drive, what happens when kids get caught drunk driving, and sort of a preeminent kind of, these are things parents need to consider prior to the prom graduation season.
Oh, that seems very smart. Okay.
Yes, it seems very timely.
Yes.
So
If we're
have
lucky, we may have some of the early preliminary BODAC survey data. So we would actually know, we have the old one from 2 years ago, but we would kind of have a sense of how many kids are actually engaged in those behaviors, like from our community. So we'll see. If not, we'll use the old data.
And
I do have a couple of questions. Oh, Jenny.
Oh, just that. I was concerned if the topics overlapped a little bit, but they
Not in the least.
Can you guys remind me? Can everyone remind me what the focus is for the first forum?
Academics.
Academics. Okay.
So Jen, it's going to be live. Are we also going to have a Zoom link?
No,
Okay, so no Zoom link. So
it's just in person.
does the flyer say who's going to be on the panel to answer questions?
No, because we actually won't know until we start getting the questions, because we want the right people to be on the panel to answer the questions.
Okay, so do we have a deadline for submissions?
My thought was, if we set the deadline for like the Thursday before the Monday, I would be able to we would be able to get a sense, but then on that Friday, I would probably resend a link out that would say the form is still live if you want to submit more questions. So yeah, I'll probably put a deadline. I'll include it somewhere in the explanatory text, and we'll probably do that in some of our social media pushes. My thought is right now, it's going to be me and Mr. Porcaro, the three principals, Mr. Brandt, and Mrs. LaPlante. The thing is that if people really start going down rabbit holes of certain programs like science research, or if they really start asking about middle school leveling or world language ECE classes, I'm going to have to rope a couple other people in, but I don't quite know. I mean, until we get questions, I have no idea who they're going to be.
That's where I think I was a little surprised by the anonymous early submission question thing, but that's really smart to be able to take the temperature of the community and have the right people in there so that people aren't disappointed.
I think it also makes managing the 2 hours like much better too. Everyone's prepared, and I guess my assumption always is that like the person who didn't ask a question, like someone else asked a question that may be relevant or the same question. So I think the submitting them ahead of time is a really good idea.
Well, and it will give the communications committee some time to kind of curate. Like I said, if you have like 6 questions that all ask the same thing, you kind of pick the one that sounds the best, and then you just ask the one. The other thing that I thought about, and I just have to check on a technology strategy to do this. But I thought it might be helpful to have, I think we talked about sort of having kind of 3 moderators. So sort of the members of the communications committee representing the town, so to speak, each of the towns. So, and you just take turns, but there probably will be questions that come up live in the meeting, right? That people will have. And if I can figure out a way, I would love to have a strategy where they could submit the questions like during the meeting, but submit them to, another moderator. So that way, again, it preserves that anonymity, but like if they get a response about something and then they have a follow-up question, they have that opportunity to ask that. So I'm thinking I can probably do some sort of QR code that gets to a Google form that then is immediately going to one of the members on the communications committee so that you would be able to see the questions come in live.
Okay, wow,
That's
that's really, yeah, that's great. That's very well thought out. You know, what Jenny was saying about, so we're focusing on the academics, but also transitioning. And I think that, I'm not sure, but maybe it would be helpful for, because I had mentioned before, I'd gotten questions from community members and also incoming students who were transitioning from the middle school to the high school, that they have just a sense of maybe adding this, and maybe there won't be any questions about it, but you know, when to understand how assistant principals are assigned, to understand who to contact when, like when to contact the counselor, when to contact the assistant principal. So I don't know if that would be beneficial, but those are the types of questions that I had. And then, you know, simple things like every freshman has a study hall built in, how the leveling works and how the freshman schedules are, you know, there's not a ton of options.
I think if we just include, you know, transition as a very broad concept, and then, you know, and again, I think we're going to have to be conscientious, and this is partially why we would take the questions early, is that, you know, if we own, you know, I think we'll have to, like, again, we'll have to curate the questions somewhat so we cover that broad swath of concepts.
Make sure everyone's questions have time. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, so, you know, I would worry if we gave too many specific ideas to people, then we shift from answering many people's diverse questions to just focusing narrowly on some folks. Or it could totally turn into something different and people only ask questions about one topic because it really and truly is the only topic they have interest in as a community. So I think we just kind of, I mean, it's our first one. We toss it out and we see what happens. But I think the most important thing in terms of preserving our authenticity is to truly like ask the questions that get submitted to us.
Right.
So
No, 100%. I was just thinking about what type of transition questions. I wasn't suggesting that we give examples.
I mean, and again, and that's why I sort of need to have the questions ahead of time, because if we're talking about transition, I might invite a link leader instead of inviting a department chair. So if we end up with 25 questions about transition to high school, then I'm going to invite somebody different to sit on the panel than I would if I have questions about science research.
Correct. Yes.
Earl, you had a question?
I was going to say, so am I right that the people who come in person, so all the questions, we'll review the questions and sort of, you know, group them so we're not asking the same questions over and over, but the people in attendance, like there's no opportunity for like to go up to a mic or anything like that. We'll have the questions ahead, but if they're sitting there, you'll see if there's a way that they can submit a question, I guess, that same day.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, if I can figure out a technology way to do that, I will. Because again, it preserves that anonymity if you have to walk up to a mic. And I know most people probably don't care, but I think some people are afraid to ask some of their questions because,
yeah,
you know, and so if we can just keep it sort of in that an anonymous range, I also think it helps you because if we have a question that is really preposterously racist or sexist or is a direct attack or target on one of our staff members, then you can curate it so that it is not going to be answered.
Right.
And I think that is important to keep this positive spirit that we're hoping to achieve from the community forum.
Yeah.
Is there
People could have concerns, but I completely agree that there should not be personal attacks and poor speech.
Yeah.
That people are exposed to in this forum. I was wondering, I actually just went today to the state workshop on civility, and they were talking about the importance of not making civility be false politeness and people having to be like falsely positive or whatever, but that to sort of try to set a standard understanding that we're here to learn and to take care of our own identities and needs, but without degrading others. Do you guys think it would be useful and or important to talk about that up front?
To
Do you
kind
mean
of
to
set the
set a
stage
tone?
for,
Sort of tone setting, and I kind of expect that there would become a little bit of a back and forth as much as we try to make sure that everyone has an anonymous chance. Like, I feel like people would be like, but what about this in the moment? And that would be a normal human conversational thing. Like, do we want, they were saying it's important to sort of pre-events to have within the group who's running it an understanding of what you will do if things start going off the rails. And also that it can be useful to sort of set expectations for behavior. I'm wondering if you want to go there or just sort of hope it all works out. In the spirit of we're trying a new thing, we can be explicit about we're trying a new thing. And if there's something that doesn't work, we're going to be taking feedback and trying to change it. Like,
yeah, I think maybe, because again, I don't want it to, and this may be where, because Paul will sit up on the main panel too. So he's great, because it's the board's community forum. It seems like you should have a voice at the community forum. But maybe it's something that he could sort of start and launch with. I think it's almost more setting an expectation that we are trying something new, and it may not work perfectly this time, but we are making an attempt to, engage in civil discourse and to model the type of information and knowledge exchange that we hope our students see and experience in school. We had a similar conversation yesterday at the CABE forum on book banning, and they were talking about, some of the language that's been coming up in public comment. And, some of the superintendents on the panel said, we have to start trying to make people understand that our students would never speak to each other that way or in our classrooms that way. And we have to model our meetings in the same way we would want our classrooms to be operating.
There was a similar theme in this today as well. They also talked about it being helpful that when you're trying to set expectations for what you want an audience or a community to be behaving as and to do, like to also set expectations for what you will do. And I thought perhaps there would be some sort of follow through thing, like we will be talking among ourselves about concerns that you've raised. I don't know, just what I liked the idea that it's not just we're setting expectations for you people out there, but for us as well.
Well, I mean, I think one of the expectations we could set is, and again, maybe we have a QR code on the way out. We would want feedback on the forum itself. So, if nothing else, right? Because I don't know, I'm not 100%, and again, who knows where it's going to go, but I think, Jenny, about the topics that came up that you were texting me at the last BCS forum, and some of those questions and topics around teacher retention and salary, which is not going to be our topic, but like, I wouldn't be able to actually make a promise around that. Right. Because, and so
of course.
I don't know that I'm
not a decision-making meeting, but just,
but I think to say
we'll be learning and using it to improve Amity, or
I think that's fair. Yep.
What about Jen, both Jens, Jenny and Jen, Jen, what about maybe not setting the tone, but saying what the goal of the forum is? And so the goal of the forum is, first attempt. We'd like to see more of this happen, but to see how it goes. And there might be hiccups, but saying that, the goal is to develop a community of belongingness and growth and openness.
I think both. I think we need both. I think setting expectations and just being very big on like transparency, like this is something new. This is why I think one of the most important things we can do is is share with everyone why we're doing this, which Jen, I think that's going to be part of was it the flyer or something, some communication you're going to send out. But I think it's important also to repeat that at the day of the forum.
Yeah. So I think, so maybe what can help me now for the remainder of this meeting is, can we come up with some collective concepts on the why we are doing this?
Yeah.
I've heard transparency. We certainly know that board meetings, the structure doesn't allow for questions and answers. So those are two sort of obvious whys.
Yeah, I think it has helped Bethany so much to have a place where people could come. And at first people were there just to vent, but like that frustration of not being able to have a conversation and not having a place where you could check reality against all the rumors that run around, just it led to a lot of social tension. And I feel like that venting of that has made the open forums just they're just an ordinary thing that happens that people can come to if they actually have a question and not something to yell at anybody about. So for me, the open forum as a way of making communities trust one another again is really important. I guess that speaks to transparency as well, Carol.
Yeah, and I think for me, it also like, I think this is what you're saying, Jenny, like it fills that like knowledge void, right? Like when people don't know or they're not sure, right? And
you just hear people whispering or chattering or social media, or when there's no real way that you can get information without making a big effort that disrupts your life and the administrators, then.
Right. And when those voids aren't filled, people start to fill them in with other things, whether they're correct or not, or accurate or not. So.
Yeah, I guess time saving would be part of it, so that every time someone gets upset and runs it up the flagpole to Jen, she doesn't have to write a separate email explaining, no, this is what's going on with this, but that everyone can all in the same place in the same time, hear the question, hear the answer.
So maybe we just say that it's kind of efficient isn't quite the word that I want to use, but because when people don't know who to ask their questions to, there would be enough of us there that they can ask our questions and somebody's bound to be able to answer them. Because sometimes I think and I think it's especially true in our district. As a matter of fact, it is unique to our district because the elementary schools are so small. People know who to go to in an elementary school, and then they get into this multi-layered large regional school district and they don't know who to go to because there's too many layers. And so I think that's that kind of could help. I would love to, I think we are safe. I don't know. Trust is something that people will give to us, but we can't necessarily say that this is going to build trust because we don't know that yet. But the idea of the transparency, so that way the trust can come to us, I think would be the sort of the way to get, hopefully, Jenny, at some of what you're hoping to accomplish from the purpose of the forum.
I think
trust is earned, not just because we do a forum.
I think it's also just a way to improve communication, right? Like it's an opportunity to like improve communication between the district and the larger community. All our families come from these communities, and it's important for us to be able to communicate with each other. So I think that's another. I think that's another.
And I think it's very helpful for people to see, like, to get to in person, hear answers to questions that they may or may not have submitted, but want to hear about. Like that the people answering them are people and not these faceless administrators who are out to do us wrong.
The other thing we might want to think about, just because it's entirely possible it goes this way, because it has certainly happened at some of these virtual keynotes, is we may get no questions. Okay. So we might want to have, I don't know, 10 questions that, think of things people have asked you that you haven't had answers to, but you may want to have a stock of questions that gets the ball rolling, because there may literally be no questions. because I
Good
have run
point.
virtual keynotes with no questions.
What about providing some sample questions just to get the ball rolling when you send out a letter? Say, we would like, we anticipate some questions around this. And
I'll
we'd
give
like to
sample.
share.
I think I'll give sample topics. I don't
Okay.
want to give sample questions because I don't want to plant necessarily. I want there to be a perception, but I think based on those topics, you guys, I mean, this is what we, like when COVID started and we were doing our webinars, the administrators actually created a lot of the questions for those initial webinars because we weren't getting questions. And so we would sort of stock fill. And then once the webinar got rolling, people would start asking us questions because we would give an answer and it would trigger something and it made them think. But we almost inevitably started all of our webinars during COVID, and we did like what, 3, with about 10 questions that we had already sort of had, through emails or through people talking to us, had to answer, because we would set up the webinar and have nobody ask us anything.
Right. Oh,
So
talking about
it's
it
just
being
something to sort of have in your back pocket.
right.
Yeah.
Talking about being live and in person for people who can't make it, is it going to be recorded and available? No. Okay. So it's like a one night only type of thing.
I think for our first one, I think trying to do all of that is too much. Again, keep it simple with just trying to moderate the questions, to have a feedback link, to have a live sort of platform for in-person questions and the panelists. If we can get that part worked out, then we can start add these other layers of, getting technicians there for recording, getting the microphones set up that we need to do, like all the other stuff that has to happen. The other thing, of course, is the Library Media Center is a slightly different setting than where we often have all of our recording stuff set up. So I think, and again, we'll sort of see how it goes. But for this first one, I think we just kind of do the simplest to try to make the content really good. And then we can expand other things out.
What is the capacity?
Sorry, go ahead, Donna.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is the capacity for the media center?
I don't know. It's probably like 80-ish, maybe.
I'd be surprised if we had that many.
I would be surprised if we have more than 25.
Is this the high school media center?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I always figure we can put 2 classes in there. So, and then a handful of like adults that are standing around. So I'm guessing 2 classes is about 50 kids. And so I'm thinking 80 is probably the most that we can fit.
I don't know who you're thinking of, like sort of introducing all of this. Is this you, Jen, Paul, me, some other person? But I'm wondering if whoever it is, if we couldn't, as part of that, this is a work in process thing, say, we're doing a simplest version of this. We want to address more topics later and to add on more tech accessibility options later, just to sort of make it clear that
I think it would be a nice combination, Jenny, of you as chair of the communications committee to be the voice for the communications committee, and in probably partnership with Paul as chair of the board. Because then again, it keeps it as the board's community forum, not Jen Byers' community forum, not the admin's community forum, but it keeps it rolling as the board's community forum, which is why, again, I think it's also, important that you're curating the questions, you're asking them, you're really sort of involved in that process. And like I said, Paul will hopefully be up on the panel to help answer questions that are really specifically board related.
Okay, well, so do you want to talk about how in the future we may be trying to add in the tech dimension, or do you want to just not set that?
Let's just
Okay,
start
so let me
here,
cross
because
that out.
again, I don't know that we want to set up an expectation, because we may come back and we may say, you know what, it works so well to just have people in person and to actually have face-to-face conversations without the tech kind of like let us see how it goes. And the feedback, people may say this would have been great if it could have been recorded, or this would have been awesome if we could have just done it virtually. So let's get the feedback and see what people say to help guide us going forward.
Okay, sounds great.
Jen, is there going to be this? We said just in person this time, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to. Okay, right. I was going to ask about a chat and things like that, but that's not relevant for this one.
It does make it less
Next
complicated.
time.
Fewer things for people to monitor. I'm feeling a little jumpy,
Yeah.
even with the like in real time monitoring questions coming in thing. Although I guess
Yeah,
it's
I
less
mean-
stressful if you're not taking questions from people standing there. There's not that management aspect of stop a minute while I filter in this
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Will they have an opportunity? Will anyone have an opportunity if they want to ask a question, or would it have to stream through anonymity type of filter?
I think again, we're going to have to see if we have 300 questions, we're going to just fill the 2 hours answering 300 questions. If we have, 3 questions come in and then we're sort of sitting there in dead silence, maybe you open it up for the people that are there. I think,
Okay.
I think we'll have to just sort of see. I could see, if for some reason prior to the end point, prior to 8:30, if we've answered all the submitted questions, all the questions that came in live, and we said, we know that you have a chance to submit them anonymously, but if you would like to ask a question or a follow-up and just do it here, then we could open it up. But I think we have to get a feel of what is actually coming in so we can kind of gauge how well we can balance the evening.
Yeah.
Because I truly have no idea what we're going to get.
So Jen, the meeting that you and I went to about communications, that guy was talking about how his district did it and was talking about, setting people at separate tables and so on. It sounds to me like we're envisioning a panel up front, moderators on the sides, and the audience there. Like, are we trying to group people for conversation, or
I think
just orient it to the one middle?
I think a little more of a panel-like thing to begin with. Again, unless for some reason the questions come in real clunky topics. So if we had, if we get, 100 questions in and we can see 30 of them are about transition from middle to high school, and 30 of them are about science research and AP classes, and 30 of them are about leveling.
Okay.
And then people could potentially, I think it's, but for right now, I'm thinking, a little cozier. So, I think of the presentations we have in our library media center, and it's a little cozier. And like not a table between us necessarily, but like a semicircle of us up front answering questions to semicircles of the audience in front of us. And then potentially the moderators sort of staggered throughout the group.
Oh, okay.
Like a fishbowl.
That does sound cozy. I like that. I like that setup.
Yeah, it sounds cozy. It sounds as if people will not
It's
feel
inviting.
divided.
Yeah. Do we have snacks? What we're talking cozy? Like
Does
seriously, it's sort
BCS
of like
have
distressing
snacks?
people. What, huh?
Does BCS have snacks?
They do at their school board meetings. They said the open forums have been virtual for so long. I don't know.
I mean, so technically you're not supposed to eat and drink in the library, right? Because, so
All
we
those
could just
books.
go with that basic rule. Yes, it can be warm and cozy. It can also be distracting as somebody's sitting next to you, munching on something and popping their water bottles. So
Okay.
I think,
I'm happy with it's a library. I don't want the mess. That's fine.
it will give us more reason to renovate though if somebody spills. So.
Okay. Well, do you need anything else from us?
So I think that, like I said, the couple things that I think that will help is, so I will draft up kind of the very, I'm going to try to make it meaty in terms of information, but not too long because nobody reads a long letter. But I will draft up the letter from Swift K-12 that I would send out to parents, and then I'll send it to the three of you for just feedback. But I'll probably BCC you guys on it, so you guys don't get into a conversation as you're giving me feedback. It'll just be feedback that comes back to me, and then I'll just take some of that and make edits where, it sort of doesn't conflict. The ideas don't conflict with each other. And then I think the thing that that you all could help with, like I said, is if we assigned each member of the communications committee 4 questions to come up with. So if we really had dead air, there would be 4 questions. I mean, and again, think of your own experience, think of questions people have asked you, questions you had to ask, questions your kids are asking you. But just come up with, and then we would have 12 questions as a launch point if we have no questions at all.
Okay, could do that.
Yep.
And then in the meantime, I will make sure like all of the technology pieces work. And we may want to schedule, I mean, certainly our next communications meeting would be probably May 9th, because that's the Tuesday after the board meeting. That'll be 2 weeks before the forum. So we can probably sort of solidify and wrap everything up then and be ready to go. And then I'll just make sure that you all have a copy of, like, whenever I set the deadline for the questions to come in, I'll make sure I get that to you so you can kind of think about how to curate some of those questions and who's going to ask what.
Okay. And the question going over, we can't be doing over email. We need a meeting, right?
I think you guys could do that, because again, you're not making any executive decision with respect to the board. You're hosting a forum. So I actually think that would not be considered a board meeting, because you're not communicating on, I think you're just planning the forum. So I think if you guys wanted to have a face-to-face meeting to curate the questions, or if you wanted to do that through email, that would be permissible.
Okay. We would not need to have a public announcing of the question.
The question review or whatever. No, I think you can just plan the forum.
Okay.
But we could set up that meeting after or at our next meeting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
And by then, based on when I send things out, if we have questions coming in, we should start to see them. Like, they should already be submitted. So,
okay.
So Jen, just for planning purposes, so the Friday before the forum will be the deadline for people.
I think I'll do it Thursday. Okay. And so then that way it would give like Friday and through the weekend. Yeah. But then I may create like a second form. So anything that came in later, like, people could still submit it, but anything that came in later, you'd have like the questions that came from the first form, and then the questions that come between Friday and Monday.
Okay.
And
I think this will be well received.
Good. Does everybody have a Gmail account or like a Google account? So if I shared the forms and the responses and everything, you would be able to get that?
Yeah, Jen, do you still have my Gmail account from the other executive committee? I can send it to you if not.
If you all wouldn't mind, because I don't want you to say your Gmail's on live broadcast, but if you don't mind emailing me your Gmail emails or your Gmail accounts, then I will be able to share the forms and the responses and everything with you.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
All right, next to do. Okay. All right, go back to the agenda. Yeah, I don't think that we have monthly communication drafts, right?
No, because our board meeting was on the 4th, and Mr. Davis and I already wrote up the chair's notes, chair's.
Yeah,
communi-
well, and if we're
Newsletter.
evolving away
That's
from
what it is.
us trying to be your communications consultants, but instead doing more of this kind of organization, I think that's fine. We drop the draft thing, or am I misunderstanding how the draft thing works?
Yeah, no, I think we can probably drop that. I mean, sometimes I like to, like, when Mr. Davis and I are sort of prepping it, like if there's a topic that we missed, it's helpful to kind of get other eyes on it. But again, this was kind of a weird month because of how
Yeah.
early the board meeting was and then April
Uh.
vacation. So we've already had to do all of that. So
Okay,
All right.
all right. Does anyone have anything else that they want to bring up?
I don't have anything.
No, I don't have anything either.
It's going to be like our first ever ahead of time finished.
I
Someone
think
has a
it
motion
is.
to adjourn. Yeah. Either of you want to move to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right.
I'll second, or do you need a second, or are we just?
I think we're
Okay.
good. All those
we're
in favor.
good. Yeah, all right.
It's the bye-bye in favor. All right. Thank you all. And thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. I am really excited about this. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate the work you put into it too.
I don't know
It's-
if it's me that's freezing up or not, but
Yeah, it's getting a little dodgy.
Oh.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you. And I guess we'll see you in 3 weeks.
We have yes. And
We have
I'll
policy.
see
We probably have policy.
next week, right?
Probably. Yeah, Jen's
Yeah.
frozen, isn't it? Nice smile though.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I will see you all soon.
Good night, you
Okay.
all.
Great.
Enjoy the weather.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
have a good night. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.